Hello and welcome to Strait Forward, a podcast about Taiwan, the island at the center of technological innovation and the global fight for democracy. I'm Channing Lee.
And I'm Libby Lange. Last time, Channing, we spoke with Iris Shaw from the DPP, right? And so today, of course, we want to get into one of Taiwan's other major political parties, which is, you might have heard of it referred to as the Kuomintang, the KMT, or even sometimes the Nationalist Party.
Yes, as we've discussed many times on this podcast, there are two main political parties, some new ones popping up, so perhaps we'll get the chance to speak with them in future episodes as well. But these two main perspectives have really shaped the kind of past few decades of Taiwan's politics, right? And also just the trajectory of its economy, et cetera. And so we were really excited this time to now, having spoken with the incumbent party, to also speak with the other major party in Taiwan.
Yeah, and more, recently in the news, people may have seen the KMT discussed specifically in terms of the debates that are happening in Taiwan around its budget and particularly its defense budget and whether there should be cuts made to that. So although the KMT is in the opposition right now in terms of the DPP holding the presidency, they actually have a plurality in the legislature, right? So they have essentially the most power in the legislature. They also hold the majority of Taiwan's mayorships, which, given Taiwan's size, are also very politically influential positions.
Just to give our listeners a little bit more background in terms of presidential history, right? Lee Teng-hui was the first democratically elected KMT president. That was right when Taiwan transitioned into a democracy. And Lee Teng-hui served as president from 1988 until 2000. And then the second president from the KMT was Ma Ying-jeou, and he served from 2008 until 2016. They obviously presided over very different times in Taiwan's political situation. That Taiwan and China, or the two sides of the strait, would be able to improve their relations. So Ma Ying-jeou spearhead a lot of economic and political efforts to improve relations between the two sides.
Yeah, so for instance, on the economic side, we saw Taiwanese businesses really expanding into China from 2002, when China was only Taiwan's fourth most important trading partner. Just 10 years later, in 2012, so halfway through Ma's presidency, China had become essentially Taiwan's most important trading partner, both its largest export destination, but also its second largest source of imports. So on the economic side, we really did see that growth happen during those years.
Yeah, in the Ma-Xi meeting in Singapore in 2015 was the very first time that leaders from the two sides of the strait met. And that was just a huge milestone, if you will, in cross-strait relations at the time. And again, this was the context of which everyone around the world was going into China and trying to see, what new relations can come of this ginormous country all of a sudden willing to engage more with the world.
It's kind of amazing to think that meeting was only 10 years ago, right? 2015. And now in 2025, we just see such a shift in China's role in the world, China's stance toward Taiwan specifically. And so I think now is a really great time to bring in someone from the KMT, Cheng-Hao Shen, who is the Assistant Director of International Affairs for the KMT, to kind of tell us a little bit about where the KMT sees Taiwan going and how it sees Taiwan's relationship with China.
Howard, thank you so much for joining us here in our studio. We're so excited to talk to you and talk about the future of the KMT.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice outside. But I'm so sorry you have to be stuck in this studio with me for the next half an hour or so.
No, we are so excited to be here, and I feel like I have to mention that you are the youngest guest we've ever had on the podcast so far. Pretty impressive. Congrats.
Thank you very much.
But you're also the Assistant Director for International Affairs for the KMT. You're a grad student at Georgetown. You're kind of doing it all right now. I would love to hear how, at the age you are, how you got involved in the KMT.
Right.
What kind of drew you to this work?
Right. So I started pretty early, right? I started in 2019. I joined the party in 2018, started in 2019. So now I'm like a perfect employee, right? Like I don't have my master's degree yet, but I already have 5 years of experience. It's what the job description out there so requires.
You're the only person who fits it, yeah.
Yes, like,
if anyone wants to hire anyone, just hire you.
An entry-level position, 5 years of experience required. That's me, yes. So started early, joined the Institute Institute of Revolutionary Practice. That's basically our Central Party school. I was doing youth organization over there for a little bit, 4 months or so, and then I joined the Department of International Affairs and stayed in Taipei for about a year and a half, and then moved to Paris. Worked on a European portfolio, and now I am in Washington D.C. Basically, working for our U.S.-Taiwan relations efforts from a KMT standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we previously spoke with the DPP office here in Washington, D.C., and Libby and I had a discussion about how interesting it is that Taiwan's political parties have offices in D.C. So we were wondering, right, for the KMT, you had an office in 2008, or up till 2008, and then it closed. And your current office just opened in 2022. So we're wondering if you can describe a little bit more about what your office does, what your goals are here in DC, and ultimately, what you're trying to achieve.
That has been an ongoing effort since Chairman Johnny Jiang, who is now the Deputy Speaker of the Republic of China Legislator Yuan, to reestablish the party representative office in the United States, but because it was COVID and there was some troubles in the finances, so it was only until Chairman Eric Zhu Lilun, who came to Washington D.C. himself in person, reopened the representative office in the United States in June 2022, I believe. So we had a representative office before Ma Ying-jeou's presidency, right? The 国青联合办公室 in Washington D.C. When Chen Shui-bian of the DPP was in power, and once we took back the presidency, President Ma and also Chairman Ma, so chairman of the party, Ma Ying-jeou, he thought that okay, now that the KMT is back in power, we can now finally pursue ROC-US relations through an exclusive channel via TECRO. And I think that has proven to be a mistake, right? Because there are just some things that you can say as a party, but you can't say as a country's representative office in Washington, D.C. And I think from Chairman Jiang to Chairman Chu, we have recognized that mistake, and that is precisely the reason why we want to reestablish the representative office. We want to deepen our relationship with the executive branch, the State Department, NSC, DOD. We want to have more communication channel with the U.S. Congress, the Senate, the House, Dems, GOPs. We want to have more insights from the think tank field in Washington, D.C. We want to talk to more people in academia. We want to have more connections with the overseas Chinese/Taiwanese communities who support the Republic of China and or the KMT. So that is why, again, Chairman Eric Chu himself flew to Washington, D.C. himself in June 2022, reopened the representative office, and now we have Ambassador Victor Chin, who was a Foreign Service officer and who went on to be Director General of the North American Affairs Department of the ROC MOFA, and ambassador first to New Zealand and then to Fiji, now as the KMT representative in the United States.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Because you mentioned, you're from Tainan.
Yeah.
A lot of DPP presence in Tainan.
Yeah.
And then you said because you just decided that you identified more or agreed more with the policies of the KMT, you decided to switch to. Can you just describe that a little bit?
Oh, yes,
what are these policies that you see and why? Did you choose to deviate from your peers?
Okay, no, of course. Okay, I think this is going to be the first time I'm ever talking about this on the record, so very happy about it. No, but friends of mine since 2014 know that I had been supporting the DPP's talking points, their efforts, particularly since the Sunflower Movement and also the Hong Zhongqiu incident with the Ministry of National Defense. And at the time, I thought, at the time I took DPP's words for it. I took it at face value. GOP voices often go unchecked, and there can be a lot of exaggerated opinions and misconceptions about the other party that just go unchecked in your daily lives. And you would come to believe that other parties, or the other party in this case the KMT, is something exactly not what it actually was. And so as I went to high school, I just realized that the world is just not how the DPP portrayed it is to be, right? The world is far more complicated than, there's the good, the bad, and the DPP is the good, the KMT is the bad, and the DPP wants more ties, more relationship with the United States, and the KMT wants to sell Taiwan out to the Chinese communists. And I felt a sense of betrayal by how deeply I believed in the DPP's talking points, and by how they have deceived so many people, including me, so many of my peers, into believing that they are the one true cause in Taiwan. That is, they are the only good in Taiwan that can bring Taiwan forward. And so once I went over that obstacle, right, we always have, growing up, we always have paradigm shifts that make ourselves into a different person. As I went through that paradigm shift, I went to the internet. I started to do more research on other political parties, right? It was 2017, 2018, so the Kuomintang was still relevant. New Power Party was still relevant, and then I started to do more research on the devil in Taiwanese politics. They instituted the second longest martial law in the history of the world. They killed so many Taiwanese. I am also ninth generation Taiwanese myself, so I started doing more research on that, and I was getting more and more attracted to the policies, the KMT policies themselves, and not the politicians. We can all have our critique of certain politicians. He was corrupt. He had a sexual affair. She probably, had too many residences in America and in Taiwan. That sort of things happen. So, and it happens across party lines too. You have these corruptive misconduct in the KMT and the DPP. So I just detach myself from the politicians and only focus on the party's mission, what they believe in, and what they are doing. And just because of that, I find myself as a person who wants Taiwan to be more than just one out of 196. I want Taiwan to be a peace bearer and a peace bringer to 1/5 of the global population, and I think that is quite achievable from my point of view in high school and in early college days. So that's how I felt attracted to the KMT's mission, and of course, I'm pretty sure we will go into it, but the party was founded by Sun Yat-sen in 1894. In Honolulu, Hawaii.
Yeah, we found that to be kind of a fun fact while we were actually doing the research for this episode, is that, the KMT got its start in Hawaii, of all places.
Yes, so we are the only political party with a U.S. passport. No, I don't want a U.S. passport. But it's very interesting to think about it, right? KMT is such an overseas-based political party compared to, the TPP or the DPP. We started off as a party who wants the entire China, so Taiwan included, to be prosperous, equal, inclusive, and stable, and built upon the traditional Republican ideals of the United States, and you can say for the French Republic too. And we went on to become this party right now in Taiwan struggling to fend off some unfounded criticism about the party's alleged misconduct with, let's say, the Communist Party, or not supporting Taiwan's or the Republic of China's national defense. And for me, the KMTs more than that. I think the KMTs is the only political entity, the only political organization in the entire Indo-Pacific who is so deeply entrenched in the horrors and the scars of modern China, but at the same time founded upon American idealism, right? Lincoln, for the people, by the people, of the people. We wrote that into the ROC Constitution. That's literally Article 1, right? You can say that, Sun Yat-sen's 3 principles of the people, it's 民有民治民享. That's basically a Chinese replica of Lincoln's ideals. And 民有民治民享, that's part of the 三民主义. That's basically one of the founding documents of the KMT. But when we were writing the ROC Constitution in 1947, we put Lincoln's version in our Article 1. So you see how, in fact, KMT is so intermingled with American idealism, republicanism, not GOP, but republicanism in a traditional sense, and how it inspired China to be a modern, safe, prosperous, democratic society, a strong Pan-Asianist state in China, to lead the entire Asian society off poverty to become prosperous. So I think there's a lot to believe in the KMT, not necessarily how it is reflected in in English media and foreign media. So I think it's very easy to misunderstand, misconceive what the KMTs is about, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for both that personal history and also touching on a bit of the KMT's own history. Of course, that is something that we would love to cover in this episode, sort of figuring out where the KMT came from and kind of how they got to where they are now. So obviously the KMT has a long history in Taiwan, right? Kind of defined the modern era of Taiwanese politics when it came to Taiwan in the 1940s. I mean, and I think our listeners have probably also noticed that you will sort of refer to Taiwan as Taiwan or Republic of China, ROC. Obviously, that's kind of part of it as well. But maybe you could actually start by just walking us through a little bit of the KMT's history in Taiwan, maybe starting like post-1949 when they arrived.
Right. So just a small history recap, right? So before the entire, ROC rule over Taiwan, there was the Dutch, the Spanish, and then 212 years of Qing Dynasty, 50 years of Japanese colonialism, and now ROC after 1945, after the Japanese surrendered, the KMT regained control over Taiwan for the Republic of China, for China. So after 1949, I think very unfortunate because of the the global atmosphere against communism as a whole, and the fear of opportunistic rebellion within Taiwan. We established from 1949 to 1987. Yes, the second longest martial law in the entire world. And I think at this point, we're still not part of that, but we saw that as a way to combat communist espionage and influence over Taiwan, right? Remember, we were still at war with the communists until 1950-ish. And even after that, right, like 1958, the Taiwan Strait crisis, the second one, right? Yeah, the second one. Yes, the first one was 1954 and 1955, and then the second Taiwan Strait crisis in 1958. And then a suspense of 20-something years, and then and then we see the efforts for cross-strait reopening, but that's probably for next time. So I think until 1970s, 1980s, there comes a point where President Jiang Jingguo, so the son of President Jiang Jieshi, Chiang Kai-shek, there came a time where he thought Taiwan had to become a democratic society for it to survive and for it to prosper. Remember, Taiwan has TSMC now because of KMT's governance. Back in the authoritarian era, we had Premier Sun Ying-xuan, we had Ministry of Economic Affairs, Li Guoding, and then, of course, Morris Chang for Gong Yanyuan, to establish. They had the foresight to establish a manufacturing company for integrated circuits, for chips, for the semiconductors. And now that they are, and now Taiwan as a whole is benefiting from it because of it.
Mm-hmm.
We also legalized abortion during the authoritarian era. We instated female quota in the legislature during the authoritarian era. So KMT's rule in Taiwan has rationalized over time, right? When back in President Jiang Jieshi, President Chiang Kai-shek, the ultimate goal was to retake the mainland, to eradicate the communists once and for all, and then reestablish rule on the Chinese mainland. But under President Jiang Jingguo, he has sort of realized that this goal is no longer attainable, that there are just separate things that are entirely irrelevant to the KMT happening on the mainland, right? The Cultural Revolution, yada yada, atrocities. So he started to look inward as opposed to fixating on the development of the mainland. He started to look inward. He started the 10 main projects of infrastructure, the highways, the railroads, the ports, the airports, and of course the TSMC. That's a big part because I'm on an SCSP podcast. And just until the 1980s, I think it was 1986, all of a sudden he just announced to a Washington Post reporter, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that starting from 1987, Taiwan will become martial law free. And after that, he appointed Li Denghui to be his successor, who then in turn enabled the peaceful democratic transition for the Republic of China from an authoritarian government to a free and open Taiwan, not Indo-Pacific. Yes, so I think that was a significant contribution to Taiwanese, and also quite literally to the humankind, because not a lot of countries were successful in that stage. So many blood was shed in democratization efforts, right? Look at Middle East, look at Africa, coups are all over again in Sahel. There was a coup attempt in the Republic of Korea. So how that was possible was quite a miracle, and I think we should give credits to the forerunners of the KMT and of the ROC, who aspired the ROC to be a free and democratic society, wrote that into the Constitution, so that once the martial law is over, they didn't have to write a new constitution, right? They just canceled the martial law, and whoop, it returned back to a democratic society. Like, the democratic principles, the mechanism, the institutions were already there. It was just the martial law that suspended some of the key provisions. But once that was eliminated, Taiwan became a democratic society.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent overview of, Taiwanese history, but also the KMT's history in Taiwan, right? We've talked in previous episodes about this democratic transition of power, and frankly, whatever angle you're coming at it, whether it's a political angle, whether it's a
Economic.
angle, etc. I mean, it is, as you said, quite miraculous. So I just kind of want to move us along in the timeline of things. Obviously, President Ma Ying-jeou was the latest KMT president. He was president from 2008 until 2016. And at the time, economic relations between Taiwan and mainland China were extremely strong, right?
Right.
You also had, I think, an trade at an all-time high relatively to prior to that. Can you explain kind of why your party took that approach to China at the time?
Right. So interesting enough, our trade with mainland China by percentage, its all-time high was during President Tsai Ing-wen's administration.
That came after.
Yeah.
So yes.
Don't worry about it. That was something around 42 to 43%.
Yeah.
But I commend the recent effort in diversifying our trade with mainland China to more partners in the world. I think that has been an ongoing effort since the Ma Ying-jeou administration, right? Remember, we signed ECFA, we signed all these agreements with mainland China, but we also signed FTAs with Singapore, New Zealand, and I believe some of other diplomatic allies in Central and South America. So that has been our goal since very long time ago. Of course, no one's going to put all the eggs in one basket. That's only not a smart strategy. It goes against all the Chinese traditional wisdoms, and it's just not something that we ascribe for. So we are happy to see that, but we have to do it in a smarter way, right? When we were trying to join CPTPP, right? It was TPP before that. We were trying to join CPTPP. We were trying to join. I think RCEP was on the table for some time, and there were other economic efforts. More than often, people forgot that back in the days, 2008-ish, buy-in from the communists were essential. Like, remember the time in the 1980s, 1990s, when the KMT government, or just Taiwan as a whole, had no trade at all with mainland China. Okay, probably some with Hong Kong, but that's entirely different. It's an entirely different story, right? We had no trade at all with mainland China. But then all of a sudden, PRC reforming and open up, ooh, magic. Everyone else was on the tail of the PRC, right? People are opening trade to the to the communists. People are, going to the mainland for exchange programs, which we found odd. We thought, oh, aren't they communists? And you were like, it's okay. They have broad markets. They're fantastic people. So let's just go there. We felt betrayed. It wasn't supposed to be like that. But then we thought, okay, well, now that everyone's opening up, let's probably do our part too, so that we are not ignored. We are not left behind by the rest of the world, quite literally rest of the world, right? So then came WTO accession, 2001, right? We worked really hard for the WTO to admit mainland China and us to the WTO at the same time. We worked really hard for that. And then we just started to open up cross-strait trade. But because we speak the same language, we have roughly the same culture. Like, I don't like to talk about mainland China as a singular entity, right? Mainland China is huge, and, each place has their own food, their own culture, in a way, own people. You can say that, Southerners, Northerners, they don't look the same. They are different people as much as you want to argue it, right? You have other minorities, but we have roughly the same culture and language. That just made it so much easier for us to be integrated economically and culturally with mainland China as we open up, right? It's not like we have to speak in a whole different language to, let's say, do trade with the United States or, with France or with Germany. And worse yet, they have a very broad market that's in need, that is seeking, that was hungry for foreign direct investment to their special economic zones. So that was the background. We didn't want to do trade with the communists because, well, they're the communists. And then as our global partners started opening up with the communists, we started to do trade with the communists. And now all of a sudden, people realize that they're the communists. They're trying to ask everyone else to not do trade with the communists. And then we were like, that's not part of the deal, I think. So then now we're going back to not doing trade with the communists again. Like, God knows how many times this routine will have to repeat, but whatever. And we agree with that, right? The communists, they have always had the intention to annex, to incorporate Taiwan under PRC role. No one in the KMT wants that, for the record. So we're like, okay, yeah, fair. So under President Ma Ying-jeou, sure, we do ECFA, but that's just one of the ways to make sure that they don't freak out when we try to sign FTAs with New Zealand, with Singapore. We try to join TPP. We try and join other regional economic integrations, and that worked from 2008 to 2016. You can argue as much as you want that, it's 2025, the communists are not the same communists as before. They are much stronger, they're much prosperous, they're, a much more malicious. But we have been dealing with them for more than 70 years. I would even go on to argue that when Chen Duxiu established the Chinese Communist Party in Shanghai in 1921, we were already following them, right? We were already dealing with them in a way because they were insurgents. So, so you can go on to you can of course go on to argue that Chinese Communist Party 2025, Xi Jinping, everything's different, but that worked for us. 2008 to 2016. So I don't think anyone could be in a position to criticize KMT's policies from 2008 to 2016 from today's standpoint, because quite frankly, we were just following the tide. While we were very well aware of the dangers and of the risk that comes with doing all these exchange with the communists. So when we were trying to sign the services trade agreement, the Fumao, and the goods trade agreement, Huomao, across the strait, right? That was in 2013, 2014, and that led to the Sunflower Movement in Taiwan. We had all the checks, we had all the supervision mechanisms, the supervision mechanisms in place, as established laws in the ROC. And when we were signing the agreements, critics started to say, oh, you know what, all these services trade agreements and goods trade agreements, they don't have any oversight mechanism. They don't have any supervision mechanism. So this is a bad trade agreement that would just bring so many communist insurgents, so many communist spies to Taiwan, and they could open business freely. They will take over our restaurants. They will take over our healthcare system. Oh yes, KMT under authoritarian era, we established universal healthcare. But they almost always forgot to look at all the other oversight mechanisms that were already in place, right? You had so many scholars, you had so many pundits back in 2014 arguing in favor of the services trade agreement and goods trade agreement, who later on retracted their statement and joined DPP administrations just for, I don't know, being high/senior officials. So, yeah, I think it was just a series of unfortunate, it was an unfortunate series of affairs that led to the misconception that, everything happened in Ma Ying-jeou was taking place with the one singular aim of integrating Taiwan with mainland China. I don't think so. I just quite frankly, I just don't think so. If you put all the records on the table and review them one by one, and review them one by one closely, and bring yourself back to the context of 2008 to 2016, to put yourself in their shoes when they were policymakers, and how the policies were formulated, and how all of a sudden people decided to call them off.
No, thank you for that context. But you kind of led me to my follow-up question that I wanted to ask. Is just, as you mentioned, in 2025, the China that we see on the global stage is very different from what we saw from 2008 to 2016. So I guess if you could just put it in a few sentences, what is the KMT's position on China now? How should Taiwan be engaging with China?
Yeah. So I think we are, as always, we are well aware of the communist threat. It's been there for 76 years. So now under Chairman Eric Chu, our official policy is 2D. We call it 2D. Defense and dialogue. Strong defense, but maintaining channels of dialogue, channels of communication, channels of dialogue. I don't think that's crazy. As much as other people like to tell, KMT is the pro-communist party in Taiwan, I thought we were just the saner one in Taiwan. We want strong defense. The DPP, probably they want strong defense too. We have channels of dialogue with Beijing. They don't. And somehow we're the pro-communist one. I don't think it works like that, right? Dems talk to Beijing. GOP talks to Beijing. Wanting to defend ourselves, but also trying to make sure that the other person doesn't freak out, I think that's the best tactic you can ever have when you're facing when you're facing such a threat across the strait. So our relationship with mainland China is quite simple, right? It's part of our external relations effort. We call it 亲美和路友日. So being pro-US, friendly with Japan, and then peaceful with mainland China. And what we do is we do trade, we do friendly exchange, right? Education, right? President Ma Ying-jeou sometimes he takes students to mainland China, to all the good universities in mainland China for a short-term exchange, and while being very firm on our principles, right? ROC sovereignty. For now, there's no political foundation for it to be negotiable. It will never be negotiable. And also being strong on our self-defense capabilities. We, as PLA, as the People's Liberation continue to build up, Taiwan inevitably will look to the United States for more weapons, for more joint training, joint training. More education manuals, more equipment, more interoperability, just more defense relations with the United States. But at the same time, you see all these other Asian countries, right? For example, Marcos Jr., a celebrated U.S. ally in Washington, D.C., before he came to D.C. to sign EDCA, I believe he was in Beijing. And he brought in, was it 20 million or 20 billion? I don't know, 20-something USD investment from Beijing to the Philippines. And I think that sort of policies, I'm not calling for mainland investment in Taiwan, absolutely not, because that would be dangerous. But a peaceful and stable relationship with mainland China, while also having that but stronger with the United States. I think that makes sense. And I don't think the KMT deserve to be called crazy just because we have all these sorts of magical capabilities that God probably just bestowed upon us for us to have stable communication channels with the CCP, with the communists.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you said often is not captured in media here, which is, why we're actually really glad to have this conversation with you. the idea of more dialogue, less dialogue with Beijing is also something that we debate here in Washington, right?
Yeah.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it's the same reason why you have that debate, right?
Mhm.
Should we have more dialogue? What does that dialogue mean? Is it
Mhm.
fruitful?
Mhm.
Does it produce anything, or is it
Mhm.
just a signal?
Mhm.
Are we getting more or giving more?
Mhm.
Right. So it's interesting that you say
Yeah.
all this because we definitely have the same discussions here in
Absolutely.
Washington
Mhm.
about how we want to approach our relationship with Beijing. Now,
Yeah.
this is a podcast about Taiwan, so I won't get too much
Mhm.
into that. But I find that very interesting. How you've
Yeah.
definitely grappled with the same question.
Yeah, but if you were Taiwanese politicians, once you start saying dialogue, they would call you, 中共同路人, pro communist. How to call that?
Sharing the road with the
Sharing the road
communists,
with the
which is
communists.
very poetic, I guess, in English.
Yes, I think so too. So I don't know. I guess I'm crazy.
Well, I mean, I do want to, get to our ultimate goal, which is, we are really curious, what the KMT's future vision is for Taiwan.
Yeah.
Right. As you've described, the KMT has been just this overarching, force behind Taiwan's modern day history.
Yeah.
For all the good and bad, right, that we've discussed throughout this podcast, and yeah, we're really curious, right? You guys have been technically the opposition party for a long time. When we spoke with the DPP office, we said, "Oh, you're now the establishment, right?" I think it's a very interesting way to think about it because I think for a long time the DPP was seen as more of the opposition. Anyways, so the KMT has now been in the opposition for a very long time, but you actually now have a majority in the legislature. So, what are your party's policy positions or priorities in the next few years? And also, just to tag on to our conversation earlier, how are they incorporating younger voices into the party?
So first of all, internationalization and rejuvenation are the two main goals under Eric Chu's chairmanship. He reestablished the representative office in the United States. We, believe it or not, have the youngest party caucus in our legislature. I think by 0.7 years old. So
a close race.
Yeah, we are that much younger than the DPP. Shockers. But more than that, I think this current KMT has been giving younger people a lot more opportunities than before, right? I believe when I was 22, when I was no, I was 23 when I was made. I was 23 when I was made foreign press secretary for our 2024 presidential candidate, Hou You-yi. We had a deputy spokesperson of the party headquarters, who was made deputy spokesperson at the age of 22. And that has never happened at the KMT in the history of the party, right? Because we were always portrayed as a party of the old guards, of people who are about to die. That's just how it was described for the last several years, or even for the last 2 decades, or even longer, right? I'm not even more than 3 decades old, so I don't know about that. But I think this transition has been significant. You have more younger faces out in the public from the party headquarters or in the legislature. So I am very proud of I'm very proud to be part of the process. I think it's something to be proudful about because just how many young people are now in key functions of the KMT is just quite, you feel represented. Second, we pushed for parliamentary reform, so legislative reform, in May 2024. Unfortunately, it was invalidated. It was called unconstitutional. I disagree with the ruling vehemently, written several op-eds about it. But that represents KMT's hope for the Republic of China to become a more rationalized country. For the Republic of China to become a country that is for the people of the current ROC citizens, of the current ROC nationals, by them, and of them. So we see structures, for example, the legislative yuan having no teeth, right? Like, let's say in the United States, let's say a State Department refused to give this certain document to the U.S. Congress, unclassified document to the U.S. Congress, the Congress can just investigate it, probably subpoena it. A lot of other ways to get the document, to justify the cost, to justify their budget request, right? In Taiwan, nada. There's no way at all for the legislative yuan to call, to request documentation, to request information. If they want to give us 2 A4 pages to justify 20 billion New Taiwan dollars of expenditure, they can do it. There's nothing at all the ROC legislature, the ROC legislative yuan can do about it. And that's what we were hoping to fix. We want this country, although, you can, from a comparative government perspective, you can argue that, semi-presidentialism is probably not the best political institution for democratic consolidation. You can argue that. You can say that, there are different subtypes of semi-presidentialism. There's premier presidentialism. There's president parliamentarism.
The grad student
Yes.
in you is coming
You're
out.
very well versed in different
You can argue that as much as you want. But we are doing our best with our legislative caucus, with our party caucus in the legislative yuan, that we are doing something within the confines of the institution. So without essentially not touching the Constitution, to make sure that checks and balances are in place, institutions are reformed, and necessary spending is checked. And of course, unnecessary spending is does not go unchecked.
Can I actually ask you a follow-up to that? When you talk about spending, I think one of the biggest things people are probably seeing in the headlines lately when it comes to Taiwanese politics is the debate over the defense budget and whether or not it should be cut or it's frozen, kind of what's happening with that. Can you talk about what the KMT's position is on that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning it. So you see all these DPP talking heads talking about how, oh my God, the cut of the proposed budget is in record high. They also always forgot to mention how the approved budget for national defense, or just for any budget at all, is at record high too. And in fact, by percentage, we only cut 1.01% of the proposed national defense budget, which is record low for more than 7 years. And I'm saying for more than 7 years, not because that there's somehow, a lower cut by percentage, somewhere down the line more than 7 years ago. It's only because that's the extent to which I know of. So it's probably more than 7 years. So we only cut by percentage 1.01% of the national defense budget, of the proposed national defense budget. And you have to remember that it is still significantly lower than the cut happened in FY 2021 and FY 2023. What happened in FY 2021? That was right after the Hong Kong protest against the extradition bill imposed by the communist authorities in Beijing and Hong Kong, and that that stirred up debate, passion in Taiwan, and we still cut a lot lower than that. It was still lower than FY 2023 national defense budget. When remember what happened before FY 2023? It was the August 2022, the PLA military drills after Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, and again that stirred up discussion, passionate debates, and just a general fear and awareness of the communist threat over Taiwan. And the catch is the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, they controlled both the presidency and the legislature back in FY 2021 and 2023, and they still cut more than we did for 2025. Think about that. Let that sink in.
No, that's helpful context. I mean, again, it's definitely a story that's been dominating headlines even in media here in the U.S. So I think it's good to just kind of hear, I guess, as from the source, sort of what the rationale
right
is
from the source.
for what's happening, from what we're seeing from the outside.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. We've really enjoyed just learning a little bit more about what your party envisions, right, for the future of Taiwan. The last question that we like to ask all of our guests, as you know, the goal of this podcast is to introduce Taiwan in its own context, right, for our listeners. And so we like to ask our guests for a recommendation related to Taiwan. So this could be food, it could be a book, something like a movie or something like that. But we were wondering if you had a recommendation.
Okay, my favorite food growing up is always牛肉汤. Yes, the beef soup. It's quite a literal translation, but I think that's the way to go. Beef soup. They're killed. The cows. They're killed at 4 a.m. or like 5 a.m. like in the morning. The meat is always freshly delivered to all the beef soup bars, all the beef soup stands in Tainan, and the butchers, the chefs, they slice it thin, put it in a bowl, and they cook it with simmering hot soup made with boiling hot water, of course, but also fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, and also beef bones. So I miss that so much.
I have clear memories
hungry.
of waking up at 5 a.m. with friends when we were
really?
visiting Tainan and not knowing who I was or where I was,
Yes.
but going to get beef soup. So
That sounds
Amazing.
Really delicious.
Yes, that was my daily routine, and somehow I'm here.
Well,
Tragic.
maybe we can end the conversation so we can go back and have some beef soup.
Yes, in Tainan. Yes, let's
Tainan.
go there right now.
But thank you again, Howard, for your time, for
Thank you so much for having
sharing
me.
all this with our audience. We're really excited for them to hear your insights.
Thank you so much, and hope to see you again.
Libby, that was such a fascinating conversation that we had with Howard. I think it definitely strikes a different tone from what we typically hear, just by nature of the DPP being in power in Taiwan and having been in power for a long time. It was really interesting to speak with the other party, right, to get their take on all that's been going on in Taiwan.
yeah, I think for me, the main takeaway is really what Howard described quite well himself, which are the two Ds that the KMT is pursuing. So there's obviously defense and dialogue. And so that kind of two-pronged approach, I think, as you said, that kind of nuance can sometimes get lost, whether that's here in Washington or in the media. I think having him just kind of walk us through it himself gave me maybe a better appreciation for the nuance of that plan.
Yeah, I think first what struck me was his constant references to the U.S. Constitution. I was actually quite surprised at how much he referenced American values and how those values are reflected in Taiwan's democracy. So I guess that was number one for me. But more importantly, I think Howard embodies that really exciting young democratic spirit, lowercase d democratic spirit that we've seen reflected in all the folks involved in Taiwan's politics and national security, right? It's that feeling where you really want to serve your country and make it a better place. You want to improve the democratic process in any way you can. And so I was very inspired by that sentiment that Howard shared with us today.
No, I totally agree. And I think, at this point now, we've essentially heard the same period of Taiwanese history 3 different times. And that was not by accident, just to be clear. We really wanted to show that period of history, just the different ways, the different perspectives that could be viewed through. And I think now that we've been able to do that, I hope everyone has sort of just a better foundation for how Taiwan came to be the democracy that it is today.
Yeah, well, with that, we look straight forward to seeing you next time.